Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Science Guide. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Perhaps the day has been long, filled with tasks and conversations, and the constant hum of activity that pulls your attention in 100 different directions. Perhaps you're simply someone who finds comfort in understanding the hidden workings of life, the quiet processes that unfold beneath the surface of everyday awareness. Either way, this journey is made for you. You don't need to do anything now but settle in. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the tension around your eyes soften. Let your breathing find its own natural rhythm, slow and easy, like waves lapping gently at the shore. Tonight, we're not traveling to distant galaxies or ancient civilizations or far-off planets. We're going somewhere much closer, somewhere you carry with you every moment of every day, but rarely pause to consider. We're going inside, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but literally. We're journeying into the inner universe that exists within your own body, into a hidden world that is constantly alive, constantly working, constantly changing. A world populated by trillions upon trillions of living beings, so small they're invisible to the naked eye, yet so essential that you could not exist without them. We're going to explore your microbiome, the vast, diverse, intricate ecosystem of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microorganisms that live on your skin, in your mouth, throughout your digestive system, and in countless other niches across your body. These are not invaders or parasites, not enemies to be feared or fought. They are your companions, your partners, your oldest evolutionary allies. They have been with you since the moment you were born, and they will remain with you for as long as you live. They are part of what makes you human, part of what makes you you. Before we begin this gentle drift through the landscape of your inner world, if these quiet explorations help you unwind or give you a peaceful way to end your day, I'd love to know which country you're listening from tonight. Leave a comment below and let me know where in the world you're drifting off to sleep. It creates a small connection across continents, a reminder that no matter where we are, we all carry these invisible worlds within us. And if this kind of content brings you calm, consider gently tapping the like button and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, let your mind grow soft at the edges. Let the weight of your body sink deeper into wherever you're resting. Let go of the day that's past and the day that's coming, because we're about to turn our attention inward to discover that you are not alone in your body, that you are never truly alone, and that this companionship, far from being unsettling, is one of the most comforting and beautiful aspects of being alive. The word microbiome might sound technical, scientific, distant. It carries that clinical quality that medical terminology often has, the kind of word you might encounter in a research paper or a doctor's office. But strip away the technical packaging, and what you're left with is something remarkably simple and profoundly intimate. Your microbiome is the collection of all the microscopic organisms that live in and on your body. Bacteria, primarily, but also viruses, fungi, archaea, and other single-celled life forms. They exist everywhere on you and in you, from the surface of your skin to the depths of your intestines, from your mouth to your lungs, from your eyes to spaces you've never consciously thought about. The numbers are almost impossible to grasp in any meaningful way. Scientists estimate that the average human body hosts somewhere between 30 and 40 trillion bacterial cells. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the same number as your own human cells. the cells that make up your tissues and organs and bones and blood. Some estimates suggest the microbial cells actually outnumber your human cells. You are, quite literally, as much microbe as you are human. You are not a single organism moving through the world. You are a walking ecosystem, a living colony, a biological metropolis where trillions of tiny residents go about their lives, mostly unnoticed, but always present. These microorganisms are astonishingly diverse. In your gut alone, there may be anywhere from 300 to 1,000 different species of bacteria, each with its own preferences, its own metabolic processes, its own way of interacting with its environment and with you. Some thrive in acidic conditions. Others prefer a more neutral pH. Some consume fiber that your own digestive enzymes cannot break down. Others produce vitamins that you cannot manufacture on your own. Some communicate with your immune system, helping to train it and regulate it. Others interact with the nerve cells lining your gut, sending signals that travel to your brain and influence your mood, your stress response, even your behavior. This is not a static population, not a fixed cast of characters. Your microbiome is dynamic, constantly shifting in response to what you eat, what you drink, where you go, who you touch, what medications you take, how much sleep you get, how stressed you feel. It ebbs and flows like tides, populations rising and falling, species appearing and disappearing, the whole community responding to the conditions of your life. And yet, despite this constant flux, there's also a kind of stability, a core community that remains relatively consistent throughout your adult life, a microbial signature that is uniquely yours. Think about that for a moment as you rest here. You are not just a body. You are a world, a living, breathing, evolving world. And within that world exist countless forms of life, all of them tiny, all of them silent, all of them working in ways you never consciously perceive, but which are absolutely essential to your existence. You are never truly alone, not when you're sitting in an empty room, not when you're lying in bed in the darkness, not ever. You carry a vast community with you everywhere you go, and that community, in its own quiet way, takes care of you. Each species of bacteria in your body has its own genome, its own genetic blueprint separate from yours. Some bacterial genomes are small, containing just a few hundred genes. Others are larger, more complex, capable of producing dozens of different enzymes and metabolic compounds. Taken together, the collective genetic material of all the microorganisms in your body, what scientists call the microbiome's metagenome, contains millions of genes, far more than the roughly 20,000 genes in your own human genome. In a very real sense, you have access to a vastly expanded genetic toolkit, capabilities you don't possess on your own, but which your microbial partners provide. This genetic diversity translates into functional diversity. Your bacteria can break down substances you can't touch, synthesize molecules you can't make, sense environmental signals you can't detect. They expand your biological repertoire, allowing you to adapt to a wider range of foods, environments, and challenges. Without them, your nutritional needs would be far more restrictive. Your immune system would be far more vulnerable. Your ability to extract energy from food would be far less efficient. And here's something remarkable. The composition of your microbiome, while unique to you, also reflects where you come from, how you've lived, what you've been exposed to over the course of your life. People from different parts of the world have different microbial signatures influenced by diet, climate, cultural practices, local environmental bacteria. People who live together share more similar microbiomes than people who live apart because they share food, living spaces, even each other's microbes through casual contact. Your microbiome is both deeply personal and profoundly social, shaped by solitude and by connection, by your individual choices and by your relationships with others. As you breathe slowly now, as your body begins to settle more deeply into rest, consider this. Your microbiome is not separate from your life story. It is part of your life story, woven into it, shaped by every experience, every meal, every place you've lived, every person you've known. It carries traces of your history in its composition, in the species present and absent, in the balance and patterns of its communities. You are not just a body with bacteria living in it. You are a body and bacteria together, inseparable, interdependent, co-creating each other moment by moment before you were born, before you took your first breath or opened your eyes or felt the air on your skin. You were sterile inside your mother's womb, floating in amniotic fluid, protected by layers of tissue and membrane. You existed in a nearly microbe-free environment. You were alone in a way you would never be alone again. The womb is not perfectly sterile. Recent research suggests small numbers of bacteria may be present even there, but it's as close to a bacteria-free state as you will ever experience. You were a blank slate, a clean canvas, an empty landscape waiting to be colonized. But the moment you were born, the moment you passed through the birth canal or emerged into the air through a surgical incision, that isolation ended abruptly and completely. The world rushed in, and with the world came the microbes, billions upon billions of them, from every direction, all at once. Your first introduction to the microbial universe was immediate, overwhelming, and absolutely essential to your survival and development. If you were born vaginally, your journey through the birth canal became your first microbial bath. You were coated head to toe in your mother's vaginal and intestinal bacteria. These weren't random microbes. They were specifically adapted, primed by evolution, to colonize a newborn. Lactobacillus species dominated, along with other beneficial bacteria that had been waiting, in a sense, for this exact moment. As you passed through, as your skin made contact with those mucous membranes, millions of bacteria transferred to you, adhering to your skin, entering your mouth, beginning their colonization of your empty body. This was not an infection. This was not contamination. This was inheritance, a biological transfer as important as the genetic inheritance coded in your DNA. Your mother was passing on more than genes. She was passing on a microbial legacy, a starter culture, the foundational community that would shape your immune system, your digestion, your development. In traditional cultures, this moment has always been understood as sacred, though perhaps not in these specific biological terms. The first moments of life, the first contact between mother and child, carry profound significance. Science is now revealing just how profound that significance is, down to the invisible level of microorganisms. If you were born by cesarean section, your microbial introduction was different. Instead of vaginal bacteria, you were colonized first by skin bacteria, both from your mother and from the hands of medical staff, along with environmental bacteria from the hospital room itself. The initial community looked different, was composed of different species in different proportions. Researchers have found that babies born by C-section have distinct microbial profiles compared to vaginally born babies, at least initially. The long-term health implications of this difference are still being studied, still being debated. But what's clear is that the mode of birth matters, that it shapes the initial seeding of your microbiome in ways that ripple forward through time. In those first hours after birth, the colonization continued from every source available. When you were held against your mother's chest, skin to skin, bacteria from her skin transferred to yours. When you were first nursed, when your mouth made contact with her breast, bacteria from her skin and from her milk entered your mouth and began traveling down into your digestive system. Breast milk itself is not sterile. It contains bacteria intentionally as part of its design. It also contains prebiotics, special sugars that human babies cannot digest, but that specific beneficial bacteria love to eat. Breast milk is feeding you and your bacteria simultaneously, encouraging the growth of particular species while discouraging others. Every surface you touched, every person who held you, every breath of air you inhaled contributed to your microbial colonization. It was not a controlled process. It was chaotic, opportunistic, almost random in its details, and yet patterns emerged. Certain species consistently colonized early, others arrived later. Some established themselves quickly and persisted. Others appeared briefly and then faded away. Within days and weeks, your gut microbiome began to develop structure, organization, a recognizable community with characteristic species and metabolic profiles. Over the first few years of your life, this community continued to develop and mature. Each new food you tried introduced new bacteria. Each illness you fought shaped the community. Each antibiotic you might have taken disrupted it temporarily, clearing space for new species or allowing existing ones to expand. Your environment mattered. Children who grow up on farms, exposed to animals and soil, develop different microbiomes than children who grow up in cities. Children with siblings share microbes with them. Children with pets acquire bacterial species from their furry companions. By the time you reached about 2 or 3 years old, your microbiome had largely stabilized into something resembling its adult form. The major players were in place. The overall structure had been established. The ecosystem had matured from a chaotic frontier into an organized community with dominant species, stable populations, and characteristic metabolic patterns. This doesn't mean it stopped changing. Your microbiome continues to evolve throughout your life, responding to diet, illness, medications, stress, aging. But the basic framework, the foundational community, was set in those early years and tends to remain relatively consistent thereafter. Let that settle gently as you breathe. Your microbial companions have been with you since the very beginning. They arrived when you were helpless, when you couldn't walk or talk or think in any conscious way. They colonized your empty body and made it their home. And from that moment forward, you and they have been inseparable, growing together, changing together, adapting to life together. They are not separate from your story. They are part of your story. From its very first chapter, your digestive system, particularly your large intestine, is the primary residence of your microbiome. If you could somehow shrink down and travel through your gut, what you would discover is not a simple tube or tunnel, but a vast and varied landscape, almost inconceivable in its complexity and scale. The inner surface of your intestines, if it were somehow spread out flat, would cover an area roughly the size of a tennis court, somewhere between 30 and 40 square meters. That's an enormous amount of real estate, all of it folded and compressed into the relatively small space of your abdomen. But it's not just the size that's remarkable. It's the terrain. The lining of your intestines is not smooth like the inside of a garden hose. It's textured, sculpted, incredibly intricate. Tiny finger-like projections called villi extend inward from the intestinal wall, increasing the surface area even further, creating more space for absorption and more habitat for microbes. Each villus is about 0.5 millimeter tall, barely visible to the naked eye, but there are millions of them lining your intestines. And each villus is itself covered with even tinier projections called microvilli, thousands of them per cell, creating a brush-like border that increases surface area even more dramatically. Under a microscope, the intestinal surface looks almost like a dense forest or a field of sea anemones, a textured landscape of projections and valleys and folds. Between the villi are pockets and crevices, small crypts where cells are produced and where bacteria can shelter. The whole structure is dynamic, constantly regenerating. The cells lining your intestines are replaced every few days, shed into the intestinal contents, and carried away, while new cells emerge from the crypts to take their place. Your gut is always renewing itself, always rebuilding, and your bacteria live on this ever-changing surface. This creates countless microenvironments, each with its own local conditions. Some areas are exposed to the flow of intestinal contents, bathed in whatever you've recently eaten and drunk. Others are sheltered, protected by mucus layers, more stable and less disturbed by passing material. Some regions experience high oxygen levels because they're close to blood vessels in the intestinal wall. Others exist in near-total anaerobic conditions, devoid of oxygen, suitable only for bacteria adapted to such environments. Different bacterial species colonize different niches according to their specific needs and capabilities. Near the stomach, where acid levels remain relatively high even after food has passed through. Only the most acid-tolerant species survive, bacteria that have evolved mechanisms to protect themselves from low pH. Further down, in the small intestine, conditions become more neutral, more hospitable, and bacterial diversity begins to increase. But it's in the large intestine, the colon, where the microbial population reaches its absolute peak. The colon is warm, dark, relatively stable in temperature and pH, and filled with partially digested food material. Your own digestive enzymes have already extracted what they can in the small intestine. What remains is primarily fiber, complex carbohydrates that your human cells cannot break down, along with some water, salts, and other materials. This is perfect food for bacteria. They thrive on what you cannot use, and they thrive in extraordinary numbers. In the colon, bacterial density can exceed 1 trillion cells per gram of contents. That's among the highest cell densities of any ecosystem on Earth, comparable to the richest soils or the most productive marine environments. These bacteria are not randomly distributed throughout the colon. They organize themselves spatially. Some species prefer to live attached to the intestinal wall, forming biofilms, stable communities that cling to the mucus layer and remain in place even as intestinal contents flow past. Other species are planktonic, free-floating in the liquid contents, moving with the flow. Some bacteria colonize the upper portions of the colon, where conditions are still somewhat close to those of the small intestine. Others dominate in the lower portions, where material moves more slowly and residence time is longer. And they organize themselves functionally as well. Certain bacteria specialize in breaking down specific types of fiber. When they consume fiber and ferment it, they produce byproducts, including gases like hydrogen and methane, and short-chain fatty acids like acetate, propionate, and butyrate. Other bacteria then consume these byproducts, creating metabolic cascades, chains of transformations where one species' waste becomes another species' food. It's an interconnected web, a complex food web playing out in microscopic scale within your gut Picture this landscape as you rest. Miles of folded tissue, textured with millions of tiny projections, coated with protective mucus, teeming with trillions of bacterial cells organized into functional communities, all of it working continuously, processing the food you ate hours ago, producing molecules that will be absorbed into your bloodstream and used by your cells, maintaining the barrier between your internal environment and the external world of food and microbes. It's not a mechanical system, it's not a factory assembly line. It's a living ecosystem as complex as a forest or a coral reef, existing entirely within the private darkness of your abdomen. And right now, as you breathe slowly, as your body relaxes more deeply into rest, this entire landscape is alive with quiet activity. Bacteria are feeding, growing, dividing, dying, being replaced by their offspring. The population is turning over constantly, individual cells living for just hours before being replaced, but the community persisting, maintaining its structure and function across time. Like a river that looks the same even though the water flowing through it is always new, your microbial community remains recognizably itself, even as its individual members come and go. Generation after generation, day after day, hour after hour. If we could observe your microbiome over the course of a complete day and night, if we could track bacterial populations and metabolic activity from morning through evening and into the depths of sleep, we would see rhythms and patterns, cycles that mirror your own daily rhythms. Your microbiome is not static or unchanging throughout the day. It has its own circadian rhythm, its own daily ebb and flow of activity that responds to your behaviors, your meal times, your sleep schedule, the hormones that cycle through your body in the morning, as you wake and begin to stir, as light enters your eyes and signals travel to your brain's master clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Your body begins its daily awakening sequence. Cortisol levels rise, giving you energy and alertness. Your digestive system becomes more active, preparing for the day's intake of food. And your gut bacteria, though they don't directly perceive light or have any awareness of day and night in the conscious sense, begin to respond to the changing conditions in your gut. When you eat breakfast, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding your bacteria. The food you consume travels through your stomach and into your small intestine, where your own digestive processes begin breaking it down. Simple sugars are absorbed quickly, proteins are broken into amino acids, fats are emulsified and absorbed, but the fiber, the complex carbohydrates that your human enzymes cannot degrade, passes through to your colon, where your bacteria have been waiting for it. Different foods support different bacterial populations. A breakfast rich in whole grains and fruits provides fiber that certain bacterial species specialize in fermenting. These species become more active, increasing their metabolic rate, consuming the fiber, producing short-chain fatty acids as metabolic byproducts. Other species that prefer different substrates might remain relatively quiet, conserving energy, waiting for foods more suited to their capabilities. The bacterial community responds to what you've eaten, shifting its activity patterns, its gene expression, its metabolic output. Throughout the day, as you continue eating and drinking, as you move through your activities, your gut bacteria continue responding. Each meal provides new substrates, new nutrients. The pH in different parts of your gut fluctuates slightly. The concentration of various molecules changes. Oxygen levels vary as blood flow to the intestines rises and falls with activity. All of these fluctuations are detected by your bacteria, not consciously, but through their evolved sensitivity to environmental conditions, and they adjust accordingly. But it's not just your bacteria responding to you. they're also influencing you. The short-chain fatty acids they produce are absorbed by your intestinal cells and enter your bloodstream. Butyrate, in particular, is a primary energy source for your colon cells, keeping them healthy and maintaining the intestinal barrier. Acetate and propionate travel to your liver and other organs, where they influence metabolic processes, affect glucose and lipid metabolism, regulate appetite signals, reduce inflammation. Your bacteria are producing molecules that affect your physiology, your energy levels, even your mood. Some bacteria produce neurotransmitter precursors or neurotransmitter-like molecules. Small amounts of serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and other signaling molecules are produced by bacterial metabolism or by intestinal cells responding to bacterial signals. While these molecules don't cross into your brain in large quantities, they do interact with the extensive network of neurons in your gut wall, the enteric nervous system, which then sends signals to your brain via the vagus nerve. It's an indirect but significant pathway of communication between your bacteria and your central nervous system. As evening approaches, as you finish your last meal of the day, as the hours stretch toward bedtime, your eating stops and your gut bacteria begin to shift their behavior. The constant influx of new nutrients slows and then ceases. The bacterial populations that were most active during digestion begin to decrease their activity. The community enters a different metabolic phase, one focused less on processing large amounts of incoming material and more on maintenance, on processing the remnants still present, on preparing for the nighttime state. When you lie down to sleep, when your body enters its nightly cycle of rest and restoration, your gut bacteria settle into their own nighttime patterns. Research has shown that gut bacteria have circadian rhythms, daily cycles of gene expression and metabolic activity that correspond to day and night. Some bacterial genes are more active during the day, others peak at night. The overall composition of the microbiome, the relative abundance of different species, can shift slightly between day and night, though the core community remains stable. During sleep, with no food coming in, bacterial activity doesn't stop, but it does change character. The bacteria continue their work, fermenting residual fiber, producing metabolites, maintaining their populations. But the intestines themselves are also undergoing renewal. The cells lining your gut are constantly being replaced, and this process accelerates during sleep. Old cells are shed, new cells emerge from the crypts, and the mucus layer that protects the intestinal wall is replenished. Your bacteria participate in this renewal, influencing the signals that regulate cell turnover, interacting with immune cells embedded in the gut wall, helping maintain the balance between tolerance and vigilance. There's something profoundly comforting about this rhythm if you allow yourself to feel it. Even as you sleep, even as your conscious mind drifts into dreams or into the formless space between dreams, your body continues its faithful work. Your heart beats without your instruction. Your lungs breathe without your effort. And deep in your gut, trillions of microscopic partners continue their quiet labor, maintaining the ecosystem that supports your health, working while you rest, asking nothing, providing everything. This daily rhythm in your microbiome is not separate from your own rhythms. The two are intimately connected, influencing each other in a constant feedback loop. When your sleep schedule is regular and consistent, when you eat at similar times each day, when your life has predictable patterns, your microbiome can synchronize with those patterns, can anticipate them, can prepare for them. The result is greater stability, better metabolic efficiency, improved communication between gut and brain. But when your rhythms are disrupted, When you stay up all night, when you eat at irregular and unpredictable times, when you travel across time zones or work night shifts, your microbiome becomes disrupted as well. The bacterial circadian rhythms become desynchronized. Species that should be active at certain times are active at the wrong times. Metabolic processes occur out of sequence, and this disruption can contribute to digestive problems, metabolic issues, even mood disturbances. Your bacteria need rhythm just as you do. They thrive on consistency, on predictability, on the stable cycles that allow them to organize their activities efficiently. As you lie here now, as your breathing slows and deepens, as the day's activities fade into memory and tomorrow's concerns remain distant and abstract, your body is finding its rhythm. Your heart rate is slowing, your blood pressure is dropping, your muscles are releasing their tension, and your microbiome, deep in the quiet darkness of your gut, is settling into its nighttime state, preparing for the hours of rest and renewal ahead. You don't have to manage any of this. You don't have to think about it, or control it, or worry about it. It's already happening, has always happened, will continue to happen as long as you simply allow yourself to rest. Most of the food you eat each day, you cannot fully digest on your own. This isn't a flaw or a weakness. It's an intentional part of how your digestive system works, a feature rather than a bug. Your stomach and small intestine are incredibly effective at breaking down and absorbing proteins, fats, and simple carbohydrates. The enzymes you produce, pepsin in the stomach, amylase for starches, lipase for fats, various proteases for proteins, these are powerful and efficient. Within hours of eating, most of the nutrients that your human biology can extract have been broken down and absorbed into your bloodstream. But there are many substances in food, particularly plant-based foods, that your enzymes cannot touch. Cellulose, hemicellulose, pectin, resistant starches, various forms of dietary fiber. These complex carbohydrates pass through your small intestine largely intact. Your human digestive system lacks the enzymes necessary to break the chemical bonds holding these molecules together. If you relied solely on your own biology, these substances would be wasted, excreted without providing any benefit, simply bulk passing through. But you don't rely solely on your own biology. You have partners. Your gut bacteria possess enzymes that you do not, enzymes capable of breaking down these complex plant molecules that resist your digestive efforts. When fiber reaches your colon, your bacteria recognize it as food. Different species specialize in different types of fiber. Some bacteria have enzymes that break down cellulose. Others target pectin. Still others work on resistant starches, or inulin, or other specific polysaccharides. Together, collectively, they can process an enormous range of plant materials that you cannot. This process is called fermentation. Bacteria consume these complex carbohydrates in an oxygen-free environment, breaking them down through anaerobic metabolism, extracting energy for their own growth and reproduction. In the process, they release byproducts, metabolic waste from their perspective, but from your perspective, these byproducts are valuable nutrients. The most important are short-chain fatty acids, simple organic acids with just a few carbon atoms. The three main ones are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. Butyrate is particularly important. It's the preferred energy source for the cells lining your colon, the colonocytes. These cells absorb butyrate and use it to fuel their activities, to maintain their structure, to carry out their functions of nutrient absorption and barrier maintenance. Butyrate also has anti-inflammatory effects, helps regulate immune responses in the gut, and may even influence gene expression in colonocytes, affecting how they behave and how long they live. Without bacterial production of butyrate, your colon cells would struggle to get the energy they need. Acetate and propionate are also absorbed, but instead of being used locally in the colon, they enter your bloodstream and travel throughout your body. Acetate reaches your liver, your muscles, your brain, where it can be used as an energy source or as a building block for synthesizing other molecules. Propionate goes primarily to the liver, where it influences glucose metabolism, affects cholesterol synthesis, and may help regulate appetite by interacting with gut hormones that signal satiety to your brain. In essence, your bacteria are producing hormones and metabolic regulators that affect your entire body, not just your gut. This is not a minor contribution. The short-chain fatty acids produced by bacterial fermentation can provide up to 10% of your daily caloric needs, depending on your diet. If you eat a lot of fiber, your bacteria produce more short-chain fatty acids, and you extract more energy from food that would otherwise pass through unused. This partnership between you and your bacteria effectively expands your digestive capacity, allows you to thrive on a wider range of foods, makes you more nutritionally flexible than you would be alone. Beyond short-chain fatty acids, your gut bacteria produce or help you produce various vitamins. Many bacterial species synthesize B vitamins, including folate, biotin, and vitamin K. Your own cells cannot make these vitamins from scratch. You need to obtain them from external sources. Some come from your diet, but a significant portion, especially of vitamin K, comes from bacterial production in your colon. In a very real sense, your bacteria are a nutritional organ, producing essential nutrients that you need, but cannot make yourself. They also break down certain dietary compounds that would otherwise be difficult to process. Oxalates, found in spinach and other greens, can be broken down by specific bacteria, reducing their absorption and their potential to form kidney stones. Certain bacteria help metabolize phytoestrogens from soy and other plants. Others assist in processing polyphenols and other plant compounds, converting them into forms that are easier for your body to absorb and use. Consider this as you rest here, as your breathing continues its slow rhythm. Right now, hours after your last meal, there are still bacteria in your gut processing what you ate, still extracting nutrients, still producing those beneficial short-chain fatty acids, still contributing to your nutrition and your energy balance. They work without supervision, without conscious direction from you, without any expectation of recognition or reward. They simply do what they have evolved to do over hundreds of millions of years. They process what you cannot process. They produce what you cannot produce. They expand your capabilities beyond what your human biology alone could achieve. You are not a self-sufficient organism. You are a collaborative organism, a partnership between human and microbe that has been functioning successfully for so long that the boundary between self and other has become blurred almost beyond recognition. Your bacteria are not exactly you. They don't carry your DNA. They're not under your direct control. But they're not exactly separate from you either. They're essential to your functioning, integrated into your biology, responding to your needs even as you respond to theirs. You are neither purely human nor purely microbial. You are both together, inseparably intertwined in a relationship so old and so fundamental that neither could thrive without the other. Buried deep within the wall of your intestines, woven into the very fabric of your gut lining, exists a network of neurons so extensive, so complex, so sophisticated that some scientists call it your second brain. This is not mere metaphor or poetic exaggeration. Your gut truly contains a nervous system that rivals the complexity of your spinal cord. Approximately 100 million neurons, more than exist in the entire nervous system of many animals, are embedded in the tissue layers of your digestive tract, forming what is known as the enteric nervous system. This enteric nervous system controls an astonishing range of digestive functions, largely independently of your brain. It coordinates the rhythmic muscular contractions, the waves of peristalsis that move food through your intestines. It regulates the secretion of digestive enzymes and hormones. It controls blood flow to the intestinal lining, increasing it when food is present and needs to be absorbed, decreasing it during fasting. It monitors the chemical composition of intestinal contents, detecting nutrients, toxins, pH changes, and responds accordingly by adjusting motility and secretions. All of this happens without your conscious awareness, without your brain's input, managed entirely by the local nervous system in your gut. But this second brain does not work in isolation. It is in constant, continuous communication with your first brain, your central nervous system, through multiple pathways. The most important is the vagus nerve, a long, wandering nerve that originates in your brainstem and descends through your chest and into your abdomen, where it branches extensively throughout your digestive organs. The vagus nerve is a two-way highway of information. Signals travel up from gut to brain, informing your brain about the state of your digestive system, about what you've eaten, about how full you feel, about inflammation or distress. And signals travel down from brain to gut, influenced by your thoughts, your emotions, your stress levels, your overall state of mind. This bidirectional communication pathway is so important, so fundamental to your overall health and well-being, that researchers have given it a specific name. They call it the gut-brain axis. And increasingly, research is revealing that this axis is not just about digestion. It's about mood, emotion, mental health, cognitive function, even personality and behavior. Your gut and your brain are in constant conversation, and that conversation shapes how you think and feel in ways you might never consciously recognize. And here is where your microbiome enters the story in a profound and somewhat startling way. Your gut bacteria can influence this gut-brain communication. They produce an astonishing array of molecules, many of which look remarkably similar to neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that neurons use to communicate. Some bacteria produce gamma-aminobutyric acid, known as GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter associated with calmness and relaxation. Other bacteria produce precursors of serotonin or influence the intestinal cells that produce serotonin. In fact, approximately 90% of your body's serotonin is produced not in your brain but in your gut by specialized cells called enterochromaffin cells. And these cells are influenced by surrounding bacteria through various chemical signals. Other bacteria produce or influence the production of dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and other neuroactive compounds. They produce short-chain fatty acids that can cross the blood-brain barrier and directly affect brain function. They produce various metabolites that interact with immune cells, which then produce cytokines that affect brain chemistry and behavior. The pathways are multiple, overlapping, complex, but the overall picture is becoming increasingly clear. Your gut bacteria have a voice in how you feel. Now, this doesn't mean your microbiome controls your emotions or determines your mental state. Human consciousness and emotion are far too complex for that. Your mood is influenced by countless factors, including genetics, life experiences, relationships, current circumstances, thoughts, beliefs, physical health, sleep quality, stress levels, and much more. Your microbiome is one factor among many, one thread in an incredibly intricate web. But it is a thread, it matters. And research is increasingly showing correlations between microbiome composition and mental health conditions. Studies have found that people experiencing depression often have different gut microbial communities compared to people without depression. Certain bacterial species are more common in depressed individuals. Others are less common. The overall diversity tends to be reduced. Similar patterns have been observed in anxiety disorders, in chronic stress, even in conditions like autism spectrum disorders and schizophrenia. Whether the microbiome differences are cause, effect, or some combination of both is still being carefully investigated, but the connection is real and measurable. Animal studies have provided even more direct evidence. When researchers transfer gut bacteria from depressed humans into mice raised in sterile, bacteria-free conditions, those mice begin to show behavioral changes consistent with depression and anxiety. They become less active, less exploratory, more withdrawn. When bacteria from healthy, non-depressed humans are transferred instead, the mice behave normally. The bacteria themselves are sufficient to transfer aspects of mood and behavior, at least in these controlled experimental conditions. And the connection flows both ways. Just as your microbiome can influence your mood and your stress levels can influence your microbiome. When you experience stress, when your body activates its fight or flight response, your sympathetic nervous system takes over. Blood flow is diverted away from digestion toward muscles and heart and lungs. Digestive motility changes, sometimes speeding up, sometimes slowing down. Stomach acid secretion may increase. The intestinal barrier can become slightly more permeable. All of these stress-induced changes affect the environment in your gut, and your bacteria respond. Chronic stress, prolonged activation of stress responses over weeks and months and years, can significantly alter your microbiome. It reduces microbial diversity, allowing certain opportunistic species to overgrow while beneficial species decline. It can increase intestinal inflammation, disrupt the protective mucus layer, weaken the tight junctions between intestinal cells, creating what's sometimes called leaky gut, where the intestinal barrier becomes more permeable than it should be. And these changes can create a feedback loop, where stress harms the microbiome, and the disrupted microbiome produces inflammatory signals and fewer calming metabolites, which contributes to more stress and anxiety. But the reverse is also true, and this is where hope and agency enter the picture. Calm, relaxation, a sense of safety and peace. These states support a healthy microbiome. When your nervous system shifts into parasympathetic mode, what's sometimes called rest and digest, when you're relaxed and comfortable and feel safe, your gut functions optimally. Blood flow increases to your digestive organs. Motility finds its healthy rhythm. Enzyme secretion is appropriate and well-timed. The mucus layer is maintained. The intestinal barrier remains intact. And in this stable, supportive environment, your gut bacteria flourish, maintaining their diversity, producing their beneficial metabolites, communicating appropriately with your immune and nervous systems. The practices that support mental health, practices like adequate sleep, regular gentle exercise, time in nature, social connection, mindfulness, slow breathing, these also support your microbiome. The practices that disrupt mental health, chronic stress, sleep deprivation, Social isolation, constant rushing, shallow breathing, these also disrupt your microbiome. The two are not separate. They're interconnected aspects of a larger whole, different facets of the same biological reality. There's a beautiful reciprocity in this, a mutual reinforcement that you can lean into. When you take care of your mind, when you cultivate calm and reduce stress and prioritize rest, you're creating conditions that benefit your microbiome. And when your microbiome is healthy and balanced, when those trillions of bacteria are producing beneficial metabolites and communicating appropriately with your nervous system, they're supporting your mental state in return. A calm mind supports a calm gut. A calm gut supports a calm mind. Care for one, and you care for both. As your breathing deepens and slows, as the tension drains from your muscles, and your thoughts grow softer and more distant, you are doing something profoundly beneficial, not just for your brain, but for your gut, and for the countless microscopic partners that live there. You are creating the conditions they need to thrive. You are supporting them, and in supporting them, they support you. The relationship is reciprocal, ancient, deeply rooted. And in this moment of rest, of letting go, of allowing your body to settle into peace, that relationship is being nourished and strengthened in ways too subtle to perceive, but utterly real nonetheless. Among the trillions of microorganisms inhabiting your body, a significant portion play a crucial and often unrecognized role in one of your body's most essential systems, your immune system. The vast, complex network of cells, tissues, and molecules that protects you from disease, that distinguishes self from non-self, that fights infections and maintains internal order. This might seem counterintuitive at first. We're conditioned from an early age to think of bacteria as germs, as sources of illness, as things to be eliminated with soap and antibiotics and disinfectants. And it's true that some bacteria, some viruses, some microorganisms can cause disease, but the overwhelming majority of the microbes in and on your body are not harmful. They are beneficial, or at the very least, they are harmless. And remarkably, many of them actively help protect you from the microbes that would do you harm. Your immune system begins its education almost immediately after birth, and your microbiome serves as one of its primary teachers, one of its most important training grounds. In the first days and weeks and months of life, as your gut is colonized by bacteria, as these microorganisms establish their communities and begin interacting with your tissues, your immune system encounters them and begins a process of learning that will continue throughout your entire life. This is not an infection in any meaningful sense. This is education. This is training. This is your immune system, learning one of the most important lessons it will ever learn: how to distinguish between harmless microbes that belong in your body and potentially dangerous invaders that do not. This educational process is absolutely essential. Without it, your immune system might attack everything indiscriminately, including your own tissues and the beneficial bacteria that you need, leading to chronic inflammation and autoimmune diseases where the body attacks itself. Or conversely, it might fail to respond appropriately to genuine threats, leaving you vulnerable to infections that a properly trained immune system would handle easily. Your microbiome provides the context, the data, the practical experience that allows your immune system to calibrate itself correctly, to find the balance between vigilance and tolerance that defines healthy immunity. The mechanisms through which this education occurs are intricate and beautiful in their elegance. Your intestinal lining, beneath the layer of epithelial cells, contains specialized immune structures called Peyer's patches and isolated lymphoid follicles. These are essentially immune system training centers embedded right in the gut wall, strategically positioned at the interface between your internal environment and the external world of food and microbes. Within these structures, various immune cells gather: T cells, B cells, dendritic cells, macrophages, and others. Some intestinal epithelial cells, specialized cells called M cells, actively sample bacteria and other materials from the gut contents and transport them to these underlying immune structures. It's like taking a census, constantly monitoring what's present in the gut, presenting samples to the immune cells beneath. When immune cells encounter bacterial components, bacterial DNA, bacterial proteins, they learn to recognize these patterns. They develop what immunologists call tolerance to beneficial bacteria, a state where they recognize these microbes as harmless residents rather than dangerous invaders. But they don't develop blanket tolerance to all bacteria. That would be dangerous. Instead, the immune system learns discrimination, learns to respond differently to different microbes based on their characteristics, their behavior, their molecular signatures. Beneficial gut bacteria typically don't penetrate deeply into tissues, don't damage cells, don't produce toxins. They stay in their appropriate locations, behave predictably, and send signals that promote immune balance. Pathogenic bacteria, harmful bacteria, often behave differently. They invade tissues, produce toxins, damage cells, trigger inflammatory responses. The immune system learns to recognize these differences and respond appropriately. Throughout your life, not just in infancy, your gut bacteria continue to interact with your immune system in ways that actively shape immune function. Some bacteria produce metabolites that have direct anti-inflammatory effects. Butyrate, that short-chain fatty acid we discussed earlier, doesn't just feed your intestinal cells. It also influences immune cell behavior, promoting the development of regulatory T cells, immune cells that help maintain tolerance and prevent excessive inflammation. Other bacterial metabolites interact with immune cell receptors, sending signals that modulate inflammatory responses that help maintain the balance between activation and restraint. Your microbiome also provides physical competition for potential pathogens, harmful bacteria, or other microbes that might try to colonize your gut and cause disease. This concept is sometimes called colonization resistance. The beneficial bacteria in your gut occupy ecological niches, physical spaces on the intestinal wall, metabolic niches where they consume particular nutrients. When all these niches are filled, when a diverse, stable microbial community is well established, there's simply no room for new arrivals. Pathogenic bacteria arriving in your gut find that all the good spots are taken, that the resources they need are already being consumed, that the environment is not hospitable to them. Some beneficial bacteria even produce antimicrobial compounds, molecules that inhibit or kill other bacteria. These are sometimes called bacteriocins, small proteins that target specific bacterial species while leaving the producer and many other bacteria unharmed. It's a form of chemical warfare at the microscopic scale. Beneficial bacteria actively defending their territory and, by extension, defending you against potential threats. Your microbiome also helps train and maintain your systemic immune system, the immune responses throughout your entire body, not just in the gut. Signals and molecules produced by gut bacteria enter your bloodstream and travel to distant organs, including your bone marrow, where immune cells are produced. These signals influence the development and behavior of immune cells, helping to maintain appropriate levels of inflammation throughout your body. Supporting immune surveillance against cancer cells and infections, contributing to the overall state of immune balance that defines health. This is truly a partnership, a mutualism where both parties benefit substantially. You provide your bacteria with a warm, stable environment and a reliable food supply. They provide you with digestive assistance, vitamin production, immune education, protection against pathogens, and much more. Neither party could thrive as well alone as they do together. The relationship has been refined over hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Since the first animals developed digestive tracts and encountered bacteria in those tracts, it is ancient, tested, remarkably effective. Your immune system is not a separate fortress defending you against a hostile microbial world. It is part of an ecosystem, a collaborator in a complex community that includes trillions of microorganisms. Together, these components create a state of dynamic balance, a condition sometimes called immune homeostasis, where your body can respond vigorously to genuine threats while maintaining peaceful coexistence with beneficial partners, where inflammation rises when needed and resolves when the threat has passed, where tolerance and vigilance coexist in productive tension. As you lie here resting, as your body settles more deeply into calm, this entire immune microbial partnership is functioning quietly, requiring no conscious attention from you, no effort, no management. Your bacteria are occupying their niches, producing their metabolites, communicating with your immune cells. Your immune cells are monitoring, learning, maintaining balance. The system is self-regulating, self-maintaining, astonishingly sophisticated, yet operating entirely automatically. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to direct it. It simply works, has always worked, will continue to work, as long as you provide the basic conditions it needs: adequate rest, reasonable nutrition, not too much chronic stress. The fundamentals. Just as your body follows daily rhythms of waking and sleeping, activity and rest, so too does your microbiome follow circadian patterns, daily cycles that synchronize with your own. Your gut bacteria don't have eyes to perceive light. They don't have internal clocks in any conventional sense, but they are exquisitely sensitive to the rhythms and patterns of your body, to the timing of meals, to the hormonal fluctuations that cycle through day and night, to the changes in gut motility and digestive activity that correspond to your waking and sleeping hours. Research has revealed that the composition of your gut microbiome, the relative abundance of different bacterial species, actually changes slightly but measurably over the course of a day. Certain species become more abundant during the daytime hours. Others peak at night. The overall metabolic activity of the bacterial community shifts, with different metabolic pathways and different genes being expressed at different times of day. This isn't random variation. It's organized, patterned, predictable. Your microbiome has a circadian rhythm. This microbial circadian rhythm is driven largely by your eating patterns. When you eat at consistent times each day, when breakfast comes at roughly the same hour each morning, when lunch and dinner follow predictable schedules, your gut bacteria can anticipate these meals. They can prepare for the influx of nutrients, can position themselves metabolically to process what's coming. The result is more efficient digestion, better metabolic coordination, improved communication between gut and other bodily systems. But when your eating schedule is erratic and unpredictable, when you eat at different times each day or skip meals irregularly or eat large meals late at night, your microbial rhythm becomes disrupted. The bacteria can't anticipate when food will arrive. Their metabolic cycles fall out of sync. The carefully coordinated patterns of activity break down. And this disruption, this desynchronization, can have consequences for your metabolic health, your digestive function, even your sleep quality and mental state. Studies have shown that people who work night shifts, whose sleep-wake cycles are reversed, often develop disrupted gut microbiomes with reduced diversity and altered metabolic profiles. Jet lag, the experience of traveling across multiple time zones and forcing your body to adapt to a new local time, also disrupts microbial rhythms. Animal studies have found that disrupting circadian rhythms in mice by constantly changing their light-dark cycles leads to microbial changes that contribute to weight gain, metabolic problems, and increased inflammation. But the relationship flows both ways. Your microbiome doesn't just respond to your circadian rhythms, it also influences them. Some bacteria produce or influence the production of molecules that affect your circadian clock genes, the genes that regulate your body's internal timekeeping systems. Short-chain fatty acids produced by bacterial fermentation can influence the expression of clock genes in various tissues, including your liver and intestines. Bacterial metabolites can affect your sleep-wake cycles, your body temperature rhythms, your hormonal patterns. When your microbiome is healthy and well synchronized, when its rhythms align with your own rhythms, it supports stable circadian function throughout your body. But when your microbiome is disrupted, when its rhythms are chaotic or desynchronized, it can contribute to circadian dysfunction, to problems with sleep, to metabolic disturbances. The gut and the clock are interconnected, influencing each other continuously. Sleep itself, the nightly journey into rest and unconsciousness that you're approaching right now as you lie here breathing slowly, is a particularly important time for your microbiome. When you sleep, several significant things happen in your body that don't happen during waking hours, or that happen much less efficiently. Your brain consolidates memories and clears metabolic waste through the glymphatic system. Your immune system shifts towards certain types of activity and away from others. Your muscles repair and rebuild. Your hormones follow specific patterns of secretion and suppression. And in your gut, the lining of your intestines undergoes renewal and repair. The cells lining your intestinal wall, the epithelial cells that form the barrier between your gut contents and your bloodstream, have a relatively short lifespan. They're replaced every few days, constantly dying and being shed into the intestinal contents, while new cells emerge from the crypts at the base of the intestinal villi. This renewal process intensifies during sleep. The rate of cell division increases. The shedding and replacement accelerates. It's part of your body's nightly maintenance routine, keeping your intestinal barrier fresh and intact. Your microbiome participates in this process. The bacteria lining your gut produce molecules that influence epithelial cell behavior, that affect how quickly cells divide, how they form tight junctions with neighboring cells, how they respond to damage and inflammation. Some bacterial metabolites promote healing, others reduce excessive cell proliferation. The overall effect is a kind of collaborative maintenance, your cells and your bacteria working together to keep the intestinal barrier healthy and functional. Sleep deprivation, insufficient sleep, poor sleep quality, these disrupt the intestinal renewal process. When you don't get enough sleep, when sleep is fragmented or shallow, the normal patterns of cell turnover are disturbed. The intestinal barrier can become more permeable, slightly leakier, allowing molecules that should stay in the gut to cross into the bloodstream and trigger inflammatory responses. And this barrier disruption affects your microbiome, altering the environment in ways that favor certain bacterial species over others, often reducing diversity. Studies have found that people who sleep poorly tend to have less diverse gut microbiomes compared to people who sleep well. The exact mechanisms are still being investigated, but the correlation is clear and consistent. Good sleep supports microbial diversity and balance. Poor sleep disrupts them, and the relationship is likely bidirectional. A disrupted microbiome can affect sleep quality through various pathways, including inflammation, altered neurotransmitter production, changes in hormones that regulate sleep-wake cycles. During the night, with no food coming in, your gut bacteria continue their work but in a different mode. They process residual fiber from your last meal, fermenting it slowly, producing metabolites gradually. They maintain their populations, dividing and dying and being replaced. They interact with the mucus layer that coats your intestinal wall, feeding on the complex sugars in mucus, helping to maintain appropriate mucus thickness and quality. They communicate with immune cells embedded in the gut wall, sending signals that help regulate immune activity. There's something deeply peaceful about this nighttime microbial activity if you allow yourself to contemplate it. While your conscious mind sleeps, while you dream or rest in the darkness between dreams, trillions of microscopic partners are quietly tending to essential tasks. They don't sleep, they don't rest in any conventional sense, but their activity takes on a different character, becomes more maintenance-focused, more about preserving balance and supporting renewal than about processing new inputs. You don't have to manage any of this. You don't have to supervise or direct or worry about it. Your only role is to provide the conditions that allow it to happen. And those conditions are simple. Lie down, close your eyes, let your body relax, allow sleep to come. Everything else, all the intricate coordination between your human biology and your microbial partners, all the signaling and responding and adjusting, it happens automatically. It has happened every night of your life. It's happening right now, and it will continue to happen as long as you allow yourself to rest. Every time you eat, every meal and snack and sip of anything other than water, you're sending a message to your microbiome. These messages are not conscious or intentional. You're not deliberately trying to communicate with bacteria, but the communication happens nonetheless through the simple mechanism of providing nutrients, of changing the chemical environment in your gut, of offering certain substances while not offering others. And your bacteria respond to these messages, shifting their populations, altering their metabolic activities, adapting to what you provide. Different foods support different bacterial communities. This is one of the most well-established findings in microbiome research, confirmed across hundreds of studies in various populations around the world. When you eat a diet rich in diverse plant foods, vegetables and fruits and whole grains and legumes and nuts, you're providing an enormous variety of different fibers and complex carbohydrates. Each type of fiber is preferred by different bacterial species. Some bacteria specialize in breaking down cellulose from vegetable cell walls. Others focus on pectin from fruits. Still others target resistant starches from grains and legumes. Others process inulin from onions and garlic, or beta-glucans from oats, or various other specific polysaccharides. When you provide this diversity of fibers, you support bacterial diversity. Many different species can find their preferred foods. The microbial community becomes more varied, more stable, more resilient. Diversity tends to correlate with health. A diverse microbiome can handle disturbances better, can resist colonization by pathogens more effectively, can provide a wider range of metabolic functions and immune interactions. It's like a diverse ecosystem in nature, a forest with many species of trees and plants and animals, which tends to be more stable and resilient than a monoculture. When you eat a diet low in fiber, when most of your calories come from highly processed foods with simple sugars and starches that are absorbed quickly in your small intestine before reaching your colon, you're essentially starving your bacteria. The bacterial species that depend on fiber have nothing to eat. Their populations shrink. The overall bacterial density may decrease. Diversity tends to decline. as a few species that can survive on mucus or other available substances come to dominate. Animal protein and fat also affect your microbiome, though in different ways than fiber. Diets high in red meat, particularly when charred or heavily cooked, can increase populations of bacteria that produce certain inflammatory metabolites. Diets high in saturated fats can alter bile acid metabolism in ways that favor bacteria associated with inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. This doesn't mean protein and fat are bad, they're essential nutrients, but balance matters. The overall dietary pattern, the combination of all the foods you eat regularly, shapes your microbiome more than any single food or nutrient. Artificial sweeteners, chemicals designed to taste sweet without providing calories, can also affect gut bacteria in surprising ways. Some studies have found that certain artificial sweeteners alter bacterial composition and may contribute to glucose intolerance, possibly by changing how gut bacteria process sugars and communicate with metabolic hormones. The research is still evolving, still complex, but it's another reminder that everything you consume affects your invisible partners. And here's something hopeful, something empowering to hold as you drift towards sleep. Your microbiome is remarkably adaptable. It's not fixed or permanent. If you shift your diet, your bacterial community shifts too, often within just a few days. Studies where people transition from low-fiber to high-fiber diets show rapid increases in fiber-fermenting bacteria, sometimes within 48 hours. The system is responsive, plastic, capable of change. This means you're not locked into any particular microbial state. You haven't permanently damaged your microbiome through past dietary choices, even if those choices weren't ideal. The bacteria have short generation times, rapid turnover, the ability to adapt and respond quickly to new conditions. You can influence your microbiome going forward, gently and gradually, through the choices you make about food, not through rigid rules or perfect eating, but through general patterns, through tendencies toward variety and fiber, and whole foods. But tonight, as you rest, there's no need to think about tomorrow's meals or future dietary choices. The bacteria will work with whatever you've given them today. They're adaptable, resilient, forgiving. They don't judge your choices. They simply respond to conditions, doing their best to thrive, to survive, to carry out their ancient functions, regardless of circumstances. They've been doing this for billions of years, long before humans existed, long before anyone worried about optimal diets or perfect nutrition. They know how to persist. They know how to work with what's available. So release any concern about whether you've eaten perfectly or treated your microbiome ideally. It's working with what you've provided. It's adapting. It's doing its job. And tomorrow, you'll have new opportunities to nourish it, to support it, to help it thrive. But for now, for tonight, simply rest. Let your bacteria tend to their work. Let your body handle its maintenance. Let sleep come and carry you into that restorative darkness where healing happens. The relationship between humans and microbes is not new, not modern, not a recent discovery of 21st century science. It is ancient beyond measure, foundational to the very existence of complex life on Earth. Long before there were humans, before there were mammals, or even the first simple animals, before there were forests or fish, or anything we would recognize as familiar life, there were microbes. Bacteria appeared on Earth more than 3.5 billion years ago, perhaps even earlier, in the planet's very first billion years of existence. They were alone, the only life, for nearly 2 billion years. During that enormous span of time, bacteria shaped the Earth. They filled the oceans, creating vast floating mats and reef-like structures called stromatolites that still exist in a few places today. They evolved the ability to harness sunlight, to perform photosynthesis, releasing oxygen as a waste product. Over hundreds of millions of years, they transformed Earth's atmosphere from one devoid of oxygen to one rich with it, creating the air we breathe today, making the planet habitable for animals. When the first multicellular organisms appeared, perhaps around 1 billion years ago, they emerged into a world already dominated by bacteria. Bacteria were everywhere, in every environment, in every niche. And the first simple animals, the first creatures with multiple cells working together, immediately encountered bacteria on their surfaces in the primitive digestive cavities they developed. From the very beginning, animal life and bacterial life were intertwined over hundreds of millions of years as animals evolved and diversified, as they developed more complex body plans and specialized tissues and sophisticated digestive systems. Their relationships with bacteria deepened. What may have started as mere coexistence, animals and bacteria simply living in proximity, gradually evolved into something more integrated, more cooperative. Animals that could tolerate beneficial bacteria and use their metabolic capabilities had advantages over animals that could not. They could extract more nutrients from food. They could survive on a wider variety of diets. They could better resist pathogens. Bacteria, for their part, evolved to live in animal guts, to specialize in the foods animals consumed, to produce molecules that benefited their hosts. The two parties, animal and microbe, began to co-evolve to shape each other's evolution, to become adapted to each other. This is how mutualistic relationships arise in nature, through long periods of interaction and selection, where both parties benefit, where the partnership becomes so advantageous that it becomes essential, where neither party can thrive as well alone as they can together. By the time the first primates appeared, by the time early mammals were diversifying and spreading across the planet, this microbe-animal partnership was already incredibly ancient, already refined through hundreds of millions of years of evolution. The primates, from which humans descended, carried complex gut microbiomes, diverse communities of bacteria that helped them digest fruits and leaves and whatever else they ate. The relationship was already intimate, already essential. When anatomically modern humans emerged, roughly 200,000 years ago in Africa, we inherited this partnership. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors, the people who lived before agriculture, before cities, before written language, carried microbiomes shaped by their environments and diets. They ate wild plants, game animals, seasonal fruits, honey, insects, whatever was available in their surroundings. Their gut bacteria reflected these diets, with high diversity, with species adapted to processing the complex plant materials they consumed regularly. About 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution changed human life dramatically. People began farming, domesticating plants and animals, settling in permanent villages and eventually cities. Diets changed. Instead of dozens or hundreds of different plant foods eaten seasonally, diets became more focused on a few staple crops: wheat, rice, maize, depending on the region. This dietary shift affected microbiomes. Certain bacterial species became more common, others declined. The overall pattern changed, though we can only infer this from archaeological evidence and from studying remaining hunter-gatherer populations today. The Industrial Revolution brought another wave of changes. Sanitation improved. Antibiotics were discovered. Food processing advanced. Diets shifted again. becoming even more dominated by a few refined crops, with much less fiber and much more simple sugars and processed ingredients. Microbiomes changed again, generally becoming less diverse, losing certain species that had been common in pre-industrial populations. Your microbiome today is the product of this long history. It carries within it echoes of ancient partnerships, traces of evolutionary adaptations that predate humanity by hundreds of millions of years. The basic mechanisms: bacteria fermenting fiber, producing short-chain fatty acids, training the immune system. These are ancient. They're the same in you as in other mammals, as in our primate cousins, as in animals far more distant from us. The partnership is older than our species, older than our genus, older than anything we recognize as human. But your microbiome also carries the imprint of your own individual history, your personal story. The bacteria you acquired from your mother at birth, the specific species you picked up from your environment as a child, from your family, your pets, your local surroundings. The shifts that occurred when you changed your diet, tried new foods, traveled to new places, the disruptions from illnesses, from antibiotics if you've taken them, from stress, or lifestyle changes. Your microbiome is both universal and unique, both ancient and contemporary, both part of a deep evolutionary legacy and part of your own particular life. In a poetic sense, your microbiome is a kind of living memory, though not memory in the sense of conscious recollection. It's memory encoded in biological patterns, in community structures, in species compositions. It carries information from the deep past, genetic information shaped by billions of years of bacterial evolution. And it carries information from your personal past, the accumulation of exposures and experiences that have shaped which bacteria are present and absent, abundant and rare. This makes your microbiome profoundly yours, a biological signature as unique as your fingerprint or your face. No two people have identical microbiomes, even identical twins, who share the same genes and often grow up in the same household, eating the same foods, have different microbiomes, similar but distinguishable. Your microbial community reflects your history in ways both obvious and subtle, in patterns visible to sophisticated analysis, even if invisible to conscious awareness. And this community, this living record of evolutionary history and personal experience, exists within you right now, at this very moment, as you rest and breathe and drift towards sleep. Ancient and present, universal and unique, working quietly, faithfully, without need for recognition or reward. They are part of you, and you are part of them, and together you form something greater than either could be alone. A partnership billions of years in the making, still active, still essential, still unfolding in the darkness of your body. Think of your body as a small planet, a world unto itself. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's a useful way to shift perspective, to see yourself differently. Like a planet, your body has varied terrain, different regions with different conditions. Your skin is the outer surface, exposed to air and light, subject to temperature changes and physical contact, a boundary between inner and outer. Your mouth is a warm, moist cave, a gateway from the external world to the interior. Your gut is a long, winding tunnel system, dark and sheltered, connected to the outside but separated from your internal tissues by a carefully maintained barrier. And like a planet, your body is inhabited, not by large animals or visible plants, but by microscopic life so numerous, so densely packed in some regions, that the numbers become almost meaningless to our conscious understanding. If you could somehow see all the bacteria on your skin, in your mouth, in your gut, if they were visible to your eyes, you would look less like a human being and more like a walking ecosystem, a mobile landscape covered in invisible forests and meadows and cities of microscopic life. These organisms are not just there by accident. They're not passive passengers or neutral observers. They are participants, contributors, essential parts of the system that maintains your health and functioning. Just as trees on Earth produce oxygen and sequester carbon, just as soil microbes break down organic matter and make nutrients available to plants, just as ocean plankton form the base of marine food webs, the bacteria in your body perform services that you cannot perform alone. They break down foods you cannot digest. They synthesize vitamins you cannot make. They train your immune system to distinguish friend from foe. They protect you from pathogens by occupying ecological niches and producing antimicrobial compounds. They send signals that regulate your metabolism, influence your mood, affect your sleep. They are not just inhabitants of your body. They are collaborators, partners in the ongoing project of keeping you alive and healthy. And like any ecosystem, your inner microbial world requires balance. Too much of one species can create problems, allowing that species to overgrow and dominate, potentially producing harmful metabolites or crowding out beneficial species. Too little diversity makes the system fragile, less able to resist disturbance, less resilient when challenged. Disruptions, whether from antibiotics that kill bacteria indiscriminately, or from severe illness, or from extreme stress, or from dramatic dietary changes, can throw the system out of balance temporarily. But ecosystems have inherent capacities for recovery, for returning to stable states when conditions improve. Your microbiome is not static. It's not a fixed collection of species frozen in time. It's dynamic, constantly adjusting, always responding to conditions, capable of change and adaptation. Bacterial populations rise and fall. Species come and go. The balance shifts, but tends to return to characteristic patterns. It's resilient in the same way that forests and coral reefs and other ecosystems are resilient, able to absorb disturbances and recover, able to maintain their basic structure and function even as details change. You are not a single organism. You are a community, a superorganism, a collective entity made of human cells and microbial cells working together. The boundary between you and not you is blurrier than it seems. Your bacteria carry their own DNA, their own genetic instructions. They reproduce independently. They existed before you were born and will continue to exist after you die, passed to new hosts, recycled into the environment. In that sense, they're separate, not part of your human biology. But they're also inseparable from you in functional terms. You couldn't digest all your food without them. Your immune system wouldn't develop properly without them. Your metabolism, your mood, your sleep, all affected by them. They're integrated into your biology so deeply, so thoroughly, that distinguishing where you end and they begin becomes almost philosophical rather than biological. This is the concept of holobiont, the idea that an organism and its associated microbiome should be considered together as a single biological unit. It recognizes that we're not isolated individuals, but ecosystems, and that understanding health and disease requires understanding not just human biology, but also microbial biology and the interactions between them. You are not human alone. You are human plus trillions of microbial partners. You are vast. You are complex. You contain multitudes, and right now as you rest in the quiet darkness, as your breathing continues its slow rhythm, As sleep approaches, this entire vast community within you is working, maintaining balance, supporting your cells, processing your food, communicating with your immune and nervous systems, adapting to conditions, renewing populations, living their microscopic lives in ways that support your macroscopic life. They ask nothing. They expect nothing. They simply carry on, faithful companions in the darkness, present since the day you were born, present at this very moment, present for as long as you live. You are never alone. Not truly, not ever. You carry a universe within you, a living, breathing, constantly active universe of microscopic life. And that universe, in its silent, invisible way, is part of what keeps you alive, keeps you healthy, keeps you human. You are collaboration. You are ecosystem. You are world. And with that thought, let yourself drift deeper. Let the awareness of your vast inner community be comforting rather than strange. You are supported. You are. Trillions of microscopic partners are working right now to maintain your health, requiring nothing from you but rest. So rest. Let go completely. Let sleep carry you away into that peaceful darkness where your body heals and your microbiome continues its ancient, faithful work. Everything is being taken care of. Everything is as it should be. You are held by something older than conscious thought, something that has been functioning perfectly since long before you were born. There is nothing you need to do, nothing to manage or control or fix. Just rest, just breathe, just allow the slow, inevitable pull of sleep to take you. Your body knows what to do. Your bacteria know what to do. They've been doing it for billions of years. They'll continue doing it through this night and all the nights to come. What happens while you sleep is remarkable in its complexity, yet simple in its essence. Your conscious mind withdraws. Your awareness fades. But your body, your faithful body, continues its work. And within that work, woven through every process, every system, every function, your microbiome plays its part. The bacteria don't sleep. They have no circadian rhythm in the sense of requiring rest, but their activity does change, does shift into a different mode as the hours of darkness stretch on. In your gut, where most of these bacteria live, the overnight hours are a time of relative calm compared to the busy periods after meals. Food has stopped arriving. The waves of muscular contractions that push material through your intestines slow to a gentler, more rhythmic pattern. The chemical environment stabilizes. And your bacteria, rather than processing constant new inputs, shift to maintenance mode. They continue fermenting the residual fiber from your last meal, working slowly through the complex carbohydrates that remain. They produce short-chain fatty acids gradually, steadily, providing a continuous low-level supply of these beneficial metabolites. Some bacteria die during the night, as bacteria always do, their short individual lifespans ending after just hours of existence. But they're replaced by new bacteria, daughters of those that die. The population turning over while remaining stable in its overall composition and density. Individual cells are temporary. The community persists, like a river that remains recognizably the same, even though the water molecules are constantly flowing through and being replaced. Your microbial community maintains its identity through continuous renewal. The mucus layer that coats your intestinal wall is also being maintained and renewed during sleep. This mucus is not just a passive barrier. It's a complex, structured substance with an outer layer that bacteria can colonize and feed upon, and an inner layer that remains relatively bacteria-free, protecting the underlying epithelial cells. Some bacteria specialize in degrading mucus, consuming the complex sugars called mucins that make up the gel-like structure. This might sound harmful, like bacteria eating away your protective layer, but it's actually beneficial when kept in balance. The degradation of the outer mucus layer stimulates the secretion of fresh mucus from goblet cells in the intestinal lining, keeping the barrier dynamic, fresh, effective. During sleep, your intestinal cells themselves are undergoing renewal at an accelerated rate. The epithelial cells that line your gut have one of the fastest turnover rates of any cells in your body, being replaced every 3 to 5 days on average. This means that every few days, you have a completely new intestinal lining. The old cells are shed from the tips of the villi, released into the intestinal contents, eventually excreted. New cells emerge from the crypts at the base of the villi, migrating upward, maturing as they go, taking their positions in the barrier. This renewal process is influenced by your bacteria. They produce molecules that affect cell proliferation, that signal epithelial cells about when to divide and when to differentiate, and when to undergo programmed cell death. Some bacterial metabolites promote healing after injury. Others help maintain the tight junctions, the sealed connections between adjacent epithelial cells that keep the barrier impermeable to large molecules and bacteria. The relationship is collaborative. Your cells and your bacteria working together to maintain the interface between your internal environment and the external world of food and microbes. Your immune system is also active during sleep, though its activity is different from waking hours. During sleep, your body produces more of certain immune proteins, including antibodies and inflammatory cytokines. This might seem counterintuitive, since inflammation is usually associated with damage and disease. But appropriate inflammation is part of healthy immune function, part of how your body clears damaged cells and pathogens and maintains tissue integrity. During sleep, low-level controlled inflammation helps clean up, helps repair, helps maintain order. Your gut bacteria participate in this nighttime immune activity. They send signals to immune cells in the intestinal wall, signals that help regulate the intensity and type of immune responses. They produce metabolites that can dampen excessive inflammation while supporting appropriate immune surveillance. They maintain their positions in the mucus layer and on the intestinal surface, providing colonization resistance against any opportunistic pathogens that might try to gain a foothold while you're vulnerable and sleeping. In your mouth, bacteria are active as well during sleep. Saliva production decreases at night, which is why you may wake with a dry mouth and why oral bacteria become more active when not constantly washed away by saliva. This is why dental hygiene before bed matters, why brushing and flossing help prevent the overgrowth of bacteria that can cause cavities and gum disease. Your oral microbiome is different from your gut microbiome, composed of different species adapted to different conditions, but it's equally complex and equally important for health. On your skin, bacteria sit in pores and hair follicles, on the surface and in the deeper layers, forming communities that vary depending on location. Oily regions like your face and scalp have different bacterial populations than dry regions like your forearms. Moist areas like armpits have different communities than exposed areas like the backs of your hands. All of these skin bacteria continue their lives throughout the night, consuming the oils and dead skin cells that your body constantly produces, creating an acidic environment that helps protect you from pathogens. contributing to the barrier function of your skin, even in your lungs, in your urinary tract, in your reproductive organs. Everywhere in and on your body, microbes live and carry out their functions. Most are harmless or beneficial. A few can cause problems if they overgrow or get into the wrong places, but usually they're kept in check by competition from other microbes, by your immune system, by the physical barriers your body maintains. The overall system is remarkably stable, remarkably self-regulating, requiring little conscious management from you. As you drift deeper into sleep now, as the conscious control over your muscles releases and your body settles into complete relaxation, as your breathing becomes automatic and your heartbeat slows to its resting pace, all of these microscopic communities continue their work. You are not aware of them. You don't feel them. You don't consciously perceive their activities in any way. But they are there, as they have always been there, as they will be there tomorrow when you wake, faithful and constant and essential. There is a profound comfort in this if you allow yourself to feel it. You are not isolated. You are not alone. You are not responsible for maintaining every aspect of your own health and functioning. Much of it is being handled automatically, has always been handled automatically, by biological systems that predate conscious thought, by partnerships that predate humanity, by processes refined over billions of years of evolution. Your conscious mind can rest because your body and your microbial partners know what to do. They don't need your attention or your worry or your management. All you need to do is provide the basic conditions. Rest when tired, eat when hungry, drink when thirsty, sleep when sleepy. Don't chronically abuse your body with extreme stress or toxins or deprivation. That's it. That's all that's required. Your biology handles the rest. Your bacteria handle their part. The system is self-maintaining, self-healing, astonishingly sophisticated, yet utterly automatic. So let go. Release any sense of needing to control or manage or fix anything. Your body is handling it. Your bacteria are handling it. They've been handling it since before you were conscious, since before you could think or speak or remember. They'll continue handling it through this night and all the nights to come. Trust them. Trust your body. Trust the ancient wisdom encoded in your biology and in the biology of your microbial partners. You are lying in darkness now, or perhaps soft light, but either way, the day is ending and night is here. Outside, wherever you are, the world continues its motion, but inside, within the private universe of your body, things are settling into their nighttime patterns, rhythms, slowing, activities, shifting. The transition from wakefulness to sleep, from activity to rest, from motion to stillness. Your bacteria are making this transition with you. They're part of you, part of your rhythms, part of your daily cycle. When you rest, they adjust. When you wake, they adjust again. They're synchronized with you, tuned to your patterns, adapted to your life. And in being adapted to you, in being so intimately connected to your body and your rhythms, they support you. They help regulate your sleep-wake cycle. They influence your mood and energy levels. They affect how well you sleep and how rested you feel upon waking. A healthy, balanced, diverse microbiome supports good sleep. A disrupted microbiome can contribute to sleep problems. The connection is real, measurable. And right now, by allowing yourself to rest, by settling into sleep, by reducing stress and promoting calm, you're creating conditions that support your microbiome, which in turn supports your sleep. It's a positive feedback loop, a virtuous cycle where each supports the other. As consciousness fades, As the boundary between waking and sleeping grows thin and permeable, as thoughts become dreamlike and vague, your body continues its faithful work. Breathing, heart beating, blood flowing, cells dividing, neurons firing in patterns that will become dreams. And bacteria living their microscopic lives, feeding and dividing and dying and being replaced, producing metabolites and sending signals and maintaining their communities. All of it happening without your effort, without your awareness, without any need for conscious control. You are a living system, incredibly complex, composed of trillions of parts, all working together, all coordinated through signals and feedback loops and ancient evolved mechanisms. And you are resting now, allowing that system to do what it does best: maintain itself, heal itself, prepare for tomorrow. The work continues in the darkness. The support continues from your invisible partners. Nothing is required from you now except surrender to sleep. Let the last threads of waking thought dissolve. Let your body grow heavy and still. Let the darkness or soft light around you become complete, encompassing, peaceful. You are safe. You are whole. You are supported by your own biology and by trillions of microscopic allies who have been with you since birth and will remain with you always. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, no problems to solve, no responsibilities to manage. Just this: rest, breath, release, sleep. The ancient rhythm of day giving way to night, activity giving way to rest, consciousness giving way to dreams, and the restorative emptiness beyond dreams. Your microbiome will work through the night. Your body will heal and renew through the night. And you, your conscious awareness, can finally let go completely, can drift into sleep, knowing that you are held, supported, maintained by forces older than thought, more reliable than effort, more faithful than any conscious commitment. You are collaboration. You are ecosystem. You are partnership. You are billions of years of evolution finding expression in this particular body at this particular moment. Drifting now towards sleep. There is nothing you need to do. Everything is being taken care of. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Rest now. Sleep now. Let go completely. Your body and your bacteria will handle everything else. They always have. They always will. You are safe. You are whole. You are never alone. In the quiet spaces between heartbeats, in the gentle rhythm of breath, in the slow decline into sleep, your microbiome continues its ancient work. Trillions of individual lives, each one brief, each one simple, yet collectively forming something extraordinary. A community, an ecosystem, a partnership that has sustained life on Earth for longer than mountains have stood, longer than oceans have flowed. These bacteria know nothing of you as a person, as a conscious being with thoughts and dreams and worries. They have no awareness, no intentions, no understanding of the larger organism they inhabit. They simply exist, consuming nutrients, reproducing, dying, being replaced, following chemical gradients, responding to environmental signals, carrying out the metabolic processes encoded in their genes. Simple organisms living simple lives. Yet from this simplicity emerges complexity. From millions of species interacting, competing, cooperating, a stable community forms. From trillions of individual bacterial cells, a functional ecosystem emerges that supports your digestion, trains your immune system, produces essential nutrients, regulates inflammation, protects against pathogens. Complexity arising from simplicity, order emerging from apparent chaos. purpose without intention. This is the beauty of biology, the elegance of evolution. Systems that work not because anyone designed them, not because anyone manages them, but because over vast spans of time, through countless generations, through trial and error and selection, patterns emerge that sustain themselves. Your microbiome is such a pattern. It persists because it works. It works because it has been refined over billions of years. And it will continue working tonight and tomorrow and all the days of your life, asking nothing, expecting nothing, simply being what it is. As you drift now, as sleep finally claims you completely, as consciousness dissolves into the formless void from which dreams will eventually emerge, consider this final thought. You are not separate from nature. You are not an independent entity moving through a world of separate things. You are nature. You are ecology. You are a temporary pattern in the endless flow of matter and energy through the universe, a brief configuration of atoms that happens to be alive, to be conscious, to be capable of wonder. And within that temporary pattern exist other patterns, other lives, other forms of existence completely different from yours, yet inseparable from yours. Your bacteria are as much a part of you as your cells, as your organs, as your thoughts. They are woven into the fabric of what you are. To be human is to be a collaboration between human and microbe. To be alive is to be in relationship with the microscopic world. This relationship asks nothing of you but what comes naturally. Eat, drink, sleep, live your life. The bacteria will adapt, will respond, will do their part. They don't need your conscious attention. They don't require your management. They simply need you to exist, to live, to provide the basic conditions of life. And in return, they provide services you cannot perform alone, capabilities you don't possess, functions you need to survive and thrive. It's a fair trade, an ancient agreement, a partnership as old as complex life itself. And tonight, as every night, that partnership continues in the darkness of your body. Quiet, invisible, essential, working while you sleep, supporting while you rest, present while you dream. You have drifted through this journey into your inner universe, from the moment of first colonization at birth, through the vast landscape of your gut, through the rhythms of day and night, through the connections between gut and brain, through the immune partnerships and the ancient evolutionary history. You've learned that you are not alone, that you never have been alone, that you carry a universe within you. And now that journey ends where it must end, in sleep, in rest, in the peaceful darkness where healing happens. Your microbiome will be there when you wake. Changed slightly, populations shifted in small ways, but fundamentally the same. Your faithful companions, your invisible partners, your ancient allies. They will continue their work tomorrow, as they did today, as they have done every day of your life. But for now, they work in the darkness while you rest, while you sleep, while you drift in that space beyond thought, beyond worry, beyond anything but the simple, peaceful existence of a body at rest. Nothing more is needed. Nothing more has ever been needed. You are enough. Your body knows enough. Your bacteria know enough. Everything required for health and healing and renewal is already present, already functioning, already carrying you through this night into tomorrow. So sleep deeply, sleep peacefully, held by your own biology, supported by trillions of silent partners, safe in the knowledge that you are cared for in ways too subtle to perceive, but utterly real nonetheless. The work continues. the partnership endures. The ancient relationship between human and microbe flows on through another night, as it has flowed through countless nights before, as it will flow through countless nights to come. You are not alone. You are collaboration. You are ecosystem. You are home to trillions. And they, in their own invisible way, make you their home as well. Rest in that. Sleep in that. Find peace in that. Good night.